Siren Isle raises many questions. Questions like, now that we have our first visible rings since Cataclysm, does this mean we're finally going to be able to transmog rings soon? Turning rings like black ice and the Noble's Elementium signet into toys was fine and all, but seriously, I'd much rather be able to just transmog them. Can we do this soon, Blizzard? Can we? You know, important questions like that. But also certain lore questions, like what's up with all these invasions? What happened to the poor Kulturans who used to be here? What do we know about Cersei, the previous owner of our circlet? Why is it called Siren Isle anyway? And, most obviously, why is no one talking about the fact that Cersei actually seems to have also made an Azshara-Style deal with N'Zoth before apparently managing to successfully betray the Void's forces and get away with it? Because, that feels like it should be a bigger deal, right? Okay, maybe that last one is not the most obvious question or even a fact, but I still think it's worth speculating about. First, allow me to explain how I got there, because I'm guessing I'm going to have to show my work a bit on this one. When we first arrive in Siren Isle, the quest that leads us to Cersei's circlet, the major feature of this patch, so quite a bit of story is specifically built around it, it tells us about the history of Cersei, a Vrykul who led her clan away from Northrend many thousands of years ago to avoid a conflict known as the Winter-Scorn War. As we fled the cold northern winds at iron backs, we questioned our clan's purpose. Who did we stand to protect? For without the keepers, who did we serve? Our prayers were answered years after our exodus. Cersei and her people ended up following the call of the same crystal that summoned us to Siren Isle, though back then it wasn't an island at all yet. And it was this crystal which they named Himosol, or the Luminous Heart, that gave them new purpose. Upon its face, Cersei's hand was pressed, a sound, a cry, but not of pain or plea of help, but of calm, of grace. Himosol, the Luminous Heart. Its radiance and face as if carved by unseen hands. Many stones I have carved, my iron hands, my tools, but the splendor of Himosol has opened my eyes. New designs, patterns and structures. My mind is clear. One of Cersei's followers, Jardfir, was particularly inspired by the crystal. He not only created the ring we now wear, Cersei's circlet, set with fragments of stone that come from Himosol, he also built a tower around the crystal and stone guardians who protect Himosol to this day. Everything was pretty much going great until that cataclysmic event in World of Warcraft's history known as the Sundering. This event ripped the continents of Azeroth apart, so it's unsurprising that it caused the Vykrul's tower to fall. And afterwards, the Vrykul discovered they were now surrounded by water. Around them, the Sundering had created an island that the Kulturan would later name Siren Isle. For generations past, our purpose held the Luminous Heart at ease. When land seized and heaved, the skies flashed in noxious green. Our bastion cracked as towers fell and waters black encroached. In vault beneath, we Sturmvein prayed, Cersei's hand upon her heart. But when tremors grew, its cries rang out, Himosol's squall renewed. When silence fell, the cries still pained, our stone-ruined doors unsealed. As Cersei strode forth, our bastion ruined, surrounded by waters new. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the Vrykul had a visitor. Upon our shores, a dark thing stood, its words in our minds, it spoke. The Deep One stirs, this place calls out, his right to claim is nigh. Kneel before the Old One's gifts, their powers yours combined. Now, if this part of the story seems familiar, that's because right around this moment, Queen Azshara was having a very similar meeting. Queen of the Night Elves at the time, it was Azshara and her fellow Highborn who had effectively caused the Sundering. So when the world exploded, it pretty much happened on top of her. In the aftermath, it seemed certain she and her people were going to drown. But she was approached, like Cersei, by a dark thing, well, actually a fish. She was approached by a cute little fish. But I mean, a dark one. Certainly a dark fish.
Deal. I like deal.
Who are you?
As it turns out, the fish is the old god N'Zoth, or at least it's how N'Zoth is appearing to Azshara. N'Zoth himself was still very much trapped in his Titan-forged prison under the ocean, but after the sundering, the Deep One was stirring.
For 1,000 years, bound beneath these waves, I have watched you.
And N'Zoth, of course, made an offering to Azshara very similar to the exact one made to Cersei. Serve me, help me rebuild my power, and I will reward you.
It won't be long now. Your death is near. Only I can sustain you. Let go. Serve me.
You are nothing.
Nothing.
I am a god! Before you walked this land, I ruled.
Magnificent.
Serve me, and we will rebuild my empire.
As we know from examples like the Naru and Beladar, anything that is claimed by the light has the potential to be turned to the void. So it makes sense that the creatures of the void like N'Zoth would want to claim Himmersoul, which seems pretty light-aligned. But obviously, Cersei and her followers weren't about to give the crystal up without a fight. In general, Cersei is an impressive figure, written to be about as legendary as possible. Not only did she lead her people on this exodus and wield a ring so important and powerful, we've all been assigned a copy. Yeah, I try not to think about the law implications of that sort of thing too much. She even managed to tame a storm crow, Threya, the same mount that everyone's been super excited about getting. We're told that Threya is actually very similar to Thorim's storm wolves, you know, Haiti and Skull, the famous Beastmaster hunter pets. Basically what I'm saying is, you owe me a Stormcrow spirit beast, Blizzard, to make up for all those times you just made a normal pet model transparent and called it a day. Seriously, how is it no spirit beast has yet to quite compare to Lochwinner Hawk? He was from Wrath of the Leech King. Give me some better spirit beasts, or let me transmog my pets again. One of the two, Blizzard, but preferably both. Where was I? Right, Cersei. She wasn't about to make any deals with something called the Deep One, preferring the simple approach of shooting the messenger. That is to say, she chopped its head off. Its head hit sand, its black blood sprayed. Cersei's blade shone bright. From darkened depths, a presence stirred. Over wail and pain, she cried. Hear us, O heart, upon this land. We stone veins stand to hold back a tide of woe. Guide us with your song, your heart, and make your pain our own. Obviously, the Void's forces are not the sort to take this kind of thing lying down, and this immediately started a great battle. On the Void side, serpents and horrors poured from the sea, a tide of scales in numbers never met. On Cersei's side, her own Vrykul, stone guardians, presumably the ones crafted by Jardfir, and, kinda surprisingly, Golden Valkyr. On golden wings, from high above, her plea was heard, a heaven's gift they brought. The Golden Valkyr are loyal to Odin, a Titan keeper who is thoroughly aligned with the light. So presumably they got involved because of this being a whole void versus light battle over Himmersoul thing. You may have also noticed that the ghosts we see on the Isle show Naga fighting the Vrykul in this ancient battle against Cersei's forces. So either that's a bit of an artistic interpretation, or this whole thing happened after Azshara and her Highborn's transformation. So possibly it was their first assignment from N'Zoth. Interestingly, the storm around Siren Isle was also caused by Cersei's side. specifically her storm crow, Threya. Threya's wrath against our foes had unleashed a storm not seen since our days in the north. This does make me wonder a bit about the storming sea. I doubt Threya's storm caused the entire thing. Siren Isle might not even be near the storming sea. We don't know for certain where it is. But either way, for quite a while now, we've suspected the storms that prevent us from exploring west of Kalimdor were created as a defense. A lore book found in Alderman speaks of an unknown land called Avaloran, which has been settled by a group that we know very little about, other than Odin considered them to be heretics due to some crime they committed against the Keepers, and the defenses they've summoned are preventing any of Odin's expeditions from reaching them. This was all going on when Odin was associated more strongly with the Titans than the Light, and its pre-sundering, but the tales of Avaloran and its defenses has caused a lot of speculation that we'll eventually find that land across the storming sea, and I can't help but notice the similarities between that story and the history of Siren Isle. Unfortunately, even with the storm and the Valkyr and all these forces working together, Cersei's side still looked very much like it was about to lose. Eventually, Cersei ordered her people back into the vault to protect the crystal, while she stayed outside and faced the onslaught alone. While Cersei clashed as Threya shrieked, her clan skin fell to scales. The stone guards cracked as rubble split, dragged to the water's deep. From the skies they fell, the gold ones screamed, their wings and spears torn asunder. With heavy soul, Cersei looked upon her kin and called, "Retreat to the vault, protect our heart." As those yet lived obeyed, Cersei stood upon our shores and faced the darkness alone. And that's it. Tablets after this one talk about the Vrykul obeying Cersei's last command to protect the heart, and about stabilizing the badly injured Threya in a way that would just so happen to provide us with a fun little challenge that eventually rewards us with the Stormcrow mount many thousands of years later. Presumably, the structures around the Forgotten Vault held nicely because Himisol has stayed quite safe from the creatures trying to claim it by force, even though they've never really given up and are still attacking Siren Isle to this day. Nobody knows for sure what happened to Cersei. Except we kind of do. During the quest, Silence the Song, the Arathi quest giver idly wonders if the Kulturans named the Siren Isle after the crystal that tends to call people to it, like a siren, or the actual sirens who lurk around its waters. And as players we tend to be notoriously tight-lipped. I mean, the fact that Azeroth has a world soul to begin with seems to come as a surprise to just a ton of characters, even though we've known that for years. So we don't bother to mention the fact that actually there's some Kulturan books on the island with some detailed information about it, including the answer to that exact question. The isle is named after Cersei. You may already know the Siren Isle map was originally an unused island expedition. These expeditions were part of Battle for Azeroth, so naturally they show signs of themes from that expansion. In this case, Kulturan mining operations, now long abandoned, and Azerite. As it turns out, the Kulturans have known about Siren Isle for years, but have mostly resolutely stayed away from it because the island is steeped in superstition. There's a whole song about it. Beware her call, the siren's call, a wail of dread and pain. Seek not her ring, that calling ring, near shores of shipwreck's bane. Beware her song, the siren's song, a veil of tidal spite. Walk not those shores, those blood-spilled shores, as dark as starless nights. Beware her cry, the siren's cry, a tale of woe and guile. Claim not her ring, oh, Cersei's ring. Beware the Siren Isle. This poem that we find in the Moldy Sea Ledger inside an abandoned Kulturan shelter tells us two things. First, the Kulturans love to make up sea shanties telling you to beware of women.
Beware the daughter of the sea.
And secondly, the Kulturans know about Cersei and her ring and are also pretty insistent that she is the siren of Siren Isle. Beware her call, the siren's call. Beware her song, the siren's song. Claim not her ring, oh, Cersei's ring. And just in case you think I'm reaching a little, this same claim can be found inside a history book all about Siren Isle that the Kulturan brought with them when they were attempting to make their mining operations work. The inside cover of the ledger features a delicately drawn map adorned with nautical imagery. Surrounding the map is a depiction of a female figure with an ornate band wrapped around her tail. The name Siren Isle took its root in the legend Cersei and the Ring. Although the story and sea shanties it inspired have evolved over time, the core legend tells of a great siren who led many to their deaths with her alluring voice and her enchanted ring. Now, of course, this could just be down to how myths are made. A beckoning call comes from an island. The island is surrounded by sirens. Something about a woman with a ring. She must be the siren, Siren Isle. But I mean, it's weird that they've got even the name right? If Cersei disappeared centuries ago around the time of the Sundering, and the only people who knew her were buried around the same time in a forgotten vault, then it is quite strange that the Kulturan knew just enough about Cersei to know about her name and her ring, but not enough to know she was a Vrykul, not a siren. Unless... I already drew a comparison between Azshara's meeting with N'Zoth and Cersei's own meeting with the Dark Thing. Both happened around the same time, shortly after the Sundering. But what if the comparison goes even further? Azshara's meeting ended with her accepting N'Zoth's offer and being transformed into the first Naga. What if Cersei, in those final moments when it really did seem like she and her followers would fall, also ended up accepting the Deep One's offer and was transformed into the first Siren? It makes a lot of sense. Sirens are remarkably similar to Naga, and we don't really know much about them, other than they mostly seem to hang around Battle for Azeroth zones like Terragard Sound. It would explain where they came from, which is something I've been speculating a lot about lately. So, as I found myself thinking all of this, part of me wondered just how much I was fooling myself into seeing an origin story that isn't actually there. Until I happened to open a pearl shell scroll case that was sitting in my bags. These items drop during Naga Invasion Week when Siren Isle is invaded by Darktide Naga who are after Cersei's circlet because they seem to intend to use it as part of their plan to bring back Queen Azshara. In fact, the scroll claims Naga have attacked Siren Isle before, multiple times. Rise and listen, Darktide. The screams of the storm-cursed echo through the depths once more, but we will not be swayed. She has evaded our capture for millennia and forsaken the gifts bestowed upon her for too long. Her wretched isle calls out once again, and she will not keep us from it. Nazeshi, Deep Surge, Hate Coil, all have sought her circlet and all have failed. But we will succeed. We will atone for the failures endured upon those shores long ago and claim it. And with it we will usher in our Queen's return. By the Queen's glory. We will atone for the failures endured upon those shores long ago. That seems to directly reference the failure to claim the crystal for the Deep One all that time ago, that battle right after the Sundering. She has evaded our capture for millennia and forsaken the gifts bestowed upon her for too long. So, gifts were bestowed upon Cersei. Millennia ago, Cersei faced the Void. If she, like Azshara, was physically transformed by that power, the Naga would see that transformation as a gift. But the Void wanted him her soul, and yet clearly never gained access to it. If Cersei did make some sort of deal with N'Zoth in order to gain her siren form, then it's a deal she turned her back on. Not only that, but Himmersol and Cersei's circlet have remained safe from the Naga despite multiple attempts that have apparently been made to claim them since long before we were around to protect the island. Of course, none of this explains where Cersei is now, but the Naga talk about her as if she's still alive, and since they probably know what's going on in Azeroth's ocean better than any of us could ever hope to, I'm going to take their word for it. On the subject of Azshara, the Darktide Scroll isn't the first hint that Azshara is coming back. You may remember that during the return to the Forbidden Reach in Dragonflight, we found a Song of the Depths, a chilling missive written from the deep which predicted quite a lot of dragonflight and even some of the war within. According to that book, when Xal'atath fulfills the final prophecy and completes the awakening, which really can surely only refer to Azeroth being awoken as a Void Lord instead of a Titan or member of one of the other cosmological forces, right? Then Azshara will return to reign over sea and sky and earth. The events that are supposed to precede this moment have actually already happened, so really any minute now. One thing this all has me wondering is if Cersei is the Kulturan's mysterious Tide Mother. A similarity between her and Azshara could have been what made it so easy for Azshara to corrupt certain Tide Sages during Battle for Azeroth. It's not a theory I'm sold on, after all the Kulturans seem to fear Cersei and they revere the Tide Mother, but it's a thought. Mostly I just like the idea because the only thing better than one giant monster fish lady that I can possibly think of is 2 giant monster fish ladies. Either way, I very much hope we do see more of Cersei. There have been hints in the War Within that we might end up going to an underwater zone at some point in the future. For example, a strange fish that we rescue in Halafor mentions the sea beneath the sea and warns us never to bring the light there. So of course, naturally, at some point we have to go to the sea beneath the sea and bring the light there now. If I'm right, and Cersei is someone who accepted the Void's gifts for the purpose of fighting against them, then her area of expertise is something that can be very specifically useful in the battles we're facing ahead. At the least, it'd be nice for Alleria to have someone to be able to relate to. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, all that good YouTube stuff. You can also support me on Patreon. It's these wonderful people whose names you're seeing right now who help keep this channel alive. Finally, you can find me on Blue Sky and Twitch, where I'm always happy to talk about all things lore. So while that's all for now, hopefully I'll see you again soon.